Welcome back to the Health Rebels podcast. Hey, you probably already know this, but this is the third episode that we've done this week in the new video podcast. Because of that, I am missing a couple things. I am looking to get the intro made back up again. Really excited. I do miss those, like the war drums that I had in that intro with welcome back to the Health Rebels podcast. I do miss that. And I do want to make sure that we're giving you an opportunity to remember the core principle with Health Rebels is the Rebel Oath, right? It's that 5 parts framework that helps us select healthy habits, but also shield ourselves from unhealthy habits. Remember, as a health rebel, part of the Rebel Oath is to reject extremes in fitness and nutrition, to energize yourself with healthy habits, to break free from common standards, to excite yourself about your potential, and finally, ultimately, love yourself and act accordingly. Right. And I'll get it all squared away so that there's like a video intro into that and I don't have to talk about that all the time. But I did miss that this week, that I haven't had a chance to really share the Rebel Oath with you. I wanted to make sure to do that as we get started on today's podcast. But today's episode, not about the Rebel Oath. It's actually going to be about how do you come back from an illness? How do you get back to activity after a hiatus away? Because look, this time of year, it's starting to get wet. It's starting to get colder. People are going to start getting sick, right? We're starting to get people crammed back into closed spaces after their summer vacations. The kids are back in school. They're petri dishes bringing germs back home. People and clients are getting sick. And it's good to know, how do we return to physical activity after a hiatus from illness, right? And this is something you can use after other hiatuses, whether it's vacations or travels or family obligations or work deadlines. If you've missed some time away from the gym, you can use this rule to get you back. And I want to share this rule with you today because it's been a rule that I've been sharing with clients a lot recently. Last month, I shared this with 2 clients, 2 different clients, 2 different illnesses, but they both ended up missing about a week and a half to 2 weeks of exercise. And as we were on the phone talking to each other, it came up and I wanted to make sure that they had the right foot moving forward so that they could transition back into activity in a way that avoided the common mistrap or the common trappings that people fall into. Oftentimes people will return to the gym and they'll try to do their old workouts just as written up, try to get right back to it. And you get a little discouraged because for whatever reason, whether it's neurological, whether it's respiratory, you just don't feel the same. And you're not able to do the same stuff. When you do those old workouts and you're just not coming up, you feel like you lost something. Now, first, let me be perfectly clear. In 2 weeks, you have not lost anything. It'll feel different. There's a lot of guesses that's probably due to neurology. Your nervous system can change pretty rapidly, in just that sharpness, that alertness. After a couple weeks, your nervous system just kind of prioritizes other parts of the body. And so your muscle recruitment goes down a little bit, so you just won't feel as sharp or as fast or as responsive as before. But that comes back after 1 or 2 exercises. It's quick. It rebuilds itself rapidly. You didn't lose any muscular strength. You didn't lose any muscular endurance. You didn't lose any cardiovascular ability. You didn't lose any respiratory ability, unless you got a cold and you got like a lung infection. But other than that, you didn't lose any of those physical traits. It's just the nervous system has to rewire, recommunicate, and reprioritize. It's fine. That comes back rapidly. But anyway, when people do go back to their old workouts, they feel like they lost something. And that can be discouraging and it can make it hard to restart. Right? So I have a system that avoids that. But then we also have to talk about the truth, especially if you're coming off a respiratory infection, whether that's a cold, a flu, our new buddy COVID, whether it's anything like that, right? Anything that makes us gummed up, clears or clogs up our sinuses, makes us talk really nasally for a couple of weeks. Anything like that, you're going to have a little bit more trouble breathing, have some trouble getting oxygen exchange across the muscle membranes, you're going to feel a little held back. This rule helps you avoid the discomforts from that as well and transition and help clean stuff up so that we can get back to it down the road. So what I gave both of these clients, 2 different illnesses, but same hiatus, same recommendation. And one that I want to give you today is the 50-50 rule. What we want to do when we're transitioning back into physical activity, whether it's from an illness or travel or vacations or holidays, when we're transitioning back into fitness, when we're transitioning back into those exercises, we want to do the 50-50 rule. We want to do about 50% of the volume at about 50% of the intensity. So earlier, if you were doing workouts that lasted about 60 minutes, you'd probably want to aim for a 30-minute exercise instead, right? If you were doing 4 sets of squats and 4 sets of push-ups, just arbitrary exercises, you'd want to do 2 sets of squats and 2 sets of push-ups. You'd want to do about half the volume. And then you also want to do half of the intensity. On strength training, this is really easy to measure because we're using external weights and numbers like that. So if you're doing like a dumbbell bench press and you're using the 70-pound dumbbells, you'd come back and you'd have a pretty easy go at using about 40-pound dumbbells. If you were doing cardio and you would rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, it was an intensity of 8, doing 50% of that, you'd probably want your intensities to be about a 4 out of 10. Now, I know what you're going to think. Everybody thinks this. When you cut down half the volume and half of the intensity, you're going to get done with that workout and you're going to go, what? What a waste. I don't even feel challenged. I don't even feel like I worked hard. And that's okay. Remember, the point of activity, and you can go all the way back to, I believe it was episode 12 of the Health Rebels podcast. We talked about the real purpose behind activity. It's not to crush yourself. It's not to push your limits. It's not to make yourself sore, but activity is about stimulating health, right? So when you do the 50-50 workout, it's not going to feel really grueling. It's not going to feel really tough. You're going to wonder if you got a workout. The reality is your job at this point is to practice the habit, to reestablish the habit of showing up, right? You're trying to reaccustom the body to the physical demands of whatever exercise and workout plan it is you have. We're not trying to challenge ourselves or stretch our limits during these transition workouts. We're trying to reaccustom ourselves to showing up. We're trying to build that habit again. We're trying to allow the body to make adaptations. We're just giving ourselves opportunities to signal health. So you're going to feel a little easy, right? Hopefully, this makes you feel excited, like you haven't lost anything while you were sick, like you haven't lost your edge. Compare this to what people typically do when they try to do everything and they feel so tired and run down. And they start to think, oh God, I've spent 9 months trying to build some fitness and I lost it in 2 weeks. What the hell? You're not going to run into that problem. You're going to feel excitement. Remember, episode 8 of the Health Rebels podcast talks about excitement being the number 1 variable, whether you'll be successful or not, right? And we want to do things that manage that excitement when we come back. So if you're coming back after a hiatus from maybe illness, maybe it's traveling, maybe it's the holidays. The holidays are right around the corner. When you're coming back from a hiatus, make sure to use the 50-50 rule. You want to use 50% of the volume at about 50% of the intensity to make sure that you're getting back into it. We're transitioning. And you want to do this for about a week, maybe 2 weeks. Somewhere in the second week, I'd probably be more focused on, instead of 50-50, try to be 75-75. Try to get that stuff back up to your baseline levels, back to where you quote unquote should be if you didn't have that hiatus. But yeah, definitely build back up from that transition. But the first time back out, you don't have to do what you used to do. You don't have to have the same intensity. You don't have to have the same volume. You're just getting back into it. Give yourself that opportunity to have a transition workout with the 50-50 rule. I hope this helps you. And in fact, if it does help you, can you help me? Wherever you're getting this podcast, whether it's the new video ones on Spotify, YouTube, or Facebook, can you leave a comment or a review? Just to kind of give a little bump to the algorithm to help spread this along so that more people can learn how to transition back into their workouts after a cold, right? Or if you're listening to the audio on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, anywhere that you listen to the audio, can you leave a review? And I'll tell you what, just to sweeten the deal a little bit, I have a high protein recipe book. I will send it to you for free. That's a $25 value. All you have to do, leave me a review, screenshot it, and shoot that screenshot over to me, steven@healthrebels.us. I'll leave the comments down in the show notes or in the description down below so that you can get that email access pretty easily. But if you send me a screenshot of an objective review, you don't even have to try to compliment me. Just tell me what you like about the show, what the show can improve, what kind of questions or what kind of needs you might have. Just leave an objective review. Send me proof that you sent it to me, and I'll send you a couple recipe books, my gift to you as thanks. So that's all I got for you today. Make sure, I want to leave you the same way I always leave you on this podcast. Come back tomorrow for another episode of the Health Rebels podcast. And between now and then, make sure you keep the oath.